The following episode does not constitute medical advice and is for informational and entertainment purposes only.
It's like GPS for your life. The Sky Vibe Show.
Welcome. If you are new, thank you so much for checking it out. It is the Sky Vibe Show. I am Judi.Diamond, along with professional astrologer Thomas Miller, and we are diving into my co-host on the iHeartRadio show we do, Morning Drive, Billy Greenwood's chart with his permission. I'm really excited about this.
You've been foaming at the mouth for this since we started this thing.
I have been. First and foremost, I gave you his birth date. I gave you his location. I didn't give you the exact time. Typical Judi. I forgot to write it down, but I know he said somewhere between 1 and 3 in the morning. So we need to first find that, and then let's see if he matches.
The first dilemma is we need to have an exact birth time. And by the way, before we get into the astrology, you guys are so good. I listen to you on the app, and you guys are just great. So kudos.
Well,
you have a wonderful
you.
show.
Well, thank you. As is you with all your podcasts. I love listening to your shows.
I've got as many podcasts as iHeart has stations, I think.
It's so true.
Seems like it.
And you're great at all of them.
Okay, so we have a dilemma because one thing that could be off is the moon sign. That could be a problem. Well, and you certainly don't want to look at a chart and give inaccurate information about somebody. And, this is important stuff. We're talking about a person's life here. So you mentioned to me that Billy had a major accident when he was young.
Yeah, he was 3 years old, and he ran into a lawnmower, and he lost the bottom half of one of his legs.
Yeah, that is foundational. And that's, not to minimize that at all. That's one of the kinds of things that you want. We look for people move early on, and that could show up. That could help to find the exact birth time. But that is major. So here's the technique. Now, we have a chart in the show notes. There's a link. We can't put charts, graphics in these podcast links in some of the players. So there's a link to a Dropbox, and you can view this chart of Billy's natal chart. And you'll see exactly what we're doing here, because if you look right up at the 12 o'clock position on this chart, you'll see two things sitting side by side. One is MC, and then to the left of that is the glyph for the planet Saturn.
What does MC mean?
Saturn, MC is the midheaven. So what you're looking at here on this chart, if you look at the left side, you'll see 18 degrees and then below that 28 minutes, and that thing in between it with the moon sitting right there. The moon's easy to spot. That's the ascendant point. That's when the sun came up on the date of Billy's birth. All right?
Okay.
The MC is when the sun was literally at its highest point in the sky that day. So it's called the midheaven, and it really points to how we shine out in the world. And Billy obviously shines out through a microphone and through all the venues and the opportunities that he has to broadcast and do sponsorships and things like this. That's his shining out. Well, Saturn in astrology rules arms and legs.
Wow.
And look, it's sitting right next to that midheaven. Now, what we can do in this technique that I'm going to suggest that we use to determine Billy's accurate birth time is we can move that midheaven. I can change the position of it by just simply moving the chart 1 minute forward or backward. In this case, we'll move it forward because I started with the broad number of just 2 a.m., but it was 4 degrees between Saturn and that midheaven. Now, astrology does use some math, but it's very simple. It's just really you're taking, every sign has 30 degrees in it. So you're just taking a division of 30 points, if you will, and moving things around. But those degrees are very important. They can tell us some amazing stuff. I'll bet something happened to Billy at 19. Actually, because that's where Saturn is. What we'll do is we'll make these to start 3 degrees or about 3 degrees apart, and that gives us 2:04 a.m. for his birth time. Now,
all right.
One thing we could do, if we can find out from Billy, was he almost 3? Was he right at 3? Was he 3.5? Was he closer to 4? Then we could dial that in. But it's really going to probably be between 2:02 a.m. or maybe 2:06 a.m. at the widest. And those 4 degrees are not going to make a difference in his chart. So we're right there. 204 is a good place. We could dial it in a minute or two different, but using that technique of something that happened to his legs, represented by Saturn, which rules legs, we can dial his in very easily. This one was simple.
Wow,
sometimes they're really difficult. Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
Isn't that just amazing?
That is so, you can't make this stuff up.
No,
It is math, and it's why, astronomy was astrology to begin with, so that makes sense.
Well, and, when you think about that, this chart, which, could Billy have predicted or fixed or determined the time of his birth without a C-section? No. This is so random that in Billy's life, this chart, which is the snowflake imprint, the one unique chart that is Billy Greenwood, that will be with him from cradle to grave, shows that accident right there prominently in the chart. It shouldn't surprise us, but it still does. It's just amazing, truly.
That is incredible. So, I'm still surprised by that, but so let's look at what is his sun's sign, his rising, and his moon, and look into those.
The big 3, all right? Okay.
I know he's a Scorpio like you.
You told me an interesting story. You said you had a friend whose son lives in another city and contacted his mom and said, "Mom, I need to know my exact time of birth." And she said she knew what was up. And she was like, "Oh, what do you?" He said, "Well, I have to know my sun, moon, and rising sign because I can't make any friends out here unless I have that. That's the first thing they ask, and that's all they talk about."
That's all the Gen Zers want to talk about. What's your big 3? What's your big 3?
That's a new term. I ran that by Robert Glasscock one time. He said, Robert can be a little grumpy sometimes. He said,
"Yeah, well, he's older.
What's that? What's big 3? I don't understand what big 3 is." The guy's been doing astrology since 1965. "I don't know what big 3 is. What is that?" I said,
"Just go on TikTok."
I said, "It's your sun, moon, and risings." Oh, well, okay. It's like,
that's funny. But I love that the younger generation is getting into it. I think that's fantastic.
Oh, I do
There's
too.
so many millions of people on TikTok that are doing, looking up and saying, if your sun sign is this, but it really, you need a professional that knows what they're doing, like you, because, you just did something incredible on finding a birth time, which I don't think many of those people on TikTok necessarily know how to do.
Well, it's a technique that needs to be more widespread because you have to. And, here's the thing, too. Not to get off on this too much, but in a hospital, let's say especially if there was something that went wrong during the birth, do you think the nurse, they might very well be trained in this, but if it was chaos and something was going wrong and they were trying to, in essence, possibly save the life of the mother or the child, are they fixed on the clock? So
I still think my birth time is inaccurate because every time I read my chart, there's 90% of it's right, but there is something in there that keeps coming up, and I go, that is not me.
Well, we should do this on your chart. Maybe we'll do that another time.
Yeah, one of these days. It's crazy because I just don't read it, and I've over and over again I go, there's got to be something wrong. I just don't know what. But anyway, this is Billy's chart.
Let's back into this. Let's talk about the rising sign first because I want to come to Scorpio. I'm a Scorpio too, so we're Scorpio brothers, and I wanted to back into that. But his rising sign, so that's what sign was the sun in when it rose on the morning of his birth? Virgo. Okay. Sign of Virgo.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so Virgo. From what I know of Virgo, I have a brother who's a Virgo sun sign, and not rising with sun, but Virgos, oh my gosh, everything has to be in its place. If a picture is hung crookedly, Virgo, it'll drive him crazy.
Is that Billy?
Oh my gosh, yes.
This guy I narrated, I've done 6 audiobooks for him. Steve Forrest, he's one of the premier astrologers in the world. He says, as just jokingly, and everybody gets all up, especially Virgos, they're like, we're Virgos are more than that. I know. Virgos are absolutely more than that. I love Virgo. It's a great sign.
I do too.
Because Virgos are, I think, the best employees in the building. You can't hire all Virgos. You need the blend, but if you've got a Virgo or 2 on your team, man, you have a great employee. They are faithful, they are loyal, they are dependent, they will always be there, they'll get the job done, but they want everything organized. So Steve's line was, you can always tell a Virgo, their sock drawers are organized.
And when you said that, I went, that is Billy Greenwood, which is hilarious because one of these days we'll get into his wife Melissa's chart. She's a Leo like me, a different kind of a Leo, but she tends to be a little bit less organized. But the love has continued, and there's something that makes them work because he puts up with it. They're just a loving Virgos. You know, my brother Kevin is a Virgo, and the one thing, there's so much beauty about them as well. Yes, they are organized, and yes, they have expectations that everyone else should be like that. But they're also, isn't Venus one of their planets? Or is it Pluto? Or which one is it?
It's Mercury.
Mercury, that's
which
right.
Which is the planet of communications.
Right, exactly.
See,
which
so
I think
there
is
it is showing up again. Mm-hmm. The other thing that's interesting, the moon is right next to his ascendant. Now, the moon is our emotions. The moon is our soul, let's say. It's our reflection.
Like our spiritual side.
Yeah, exactly. That, too, is almost 3 degrees away from that ascendant. So there's this 3-degree theme. And what you can do with that is play that out. Now, this gets a little bit like, okay, every 3 years. But for Billy, every 3 years or a multiple of 3, 6, 9, 12, right? Keep on going. Mm-hmm. And then you can do the multiples. So as the number grows, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, well, then you can do 30. And then you could do 60. You know, you can do multiples on this. Mm-hmm. But basically, every 3 years, starting at 0, maybe something thematic happens in Billy's life along
Interesting. Oh, he's going to have to check out the days when he went from one market to another or, you know.
Yeah, a synchronicity, a change, exactly. That 3 is probably and multiples of 3 is probably a big number for him.
Interesting.
So the moon sits right next to that. So not only does he have the Virgo, but it is in his emotional bones. So you're not only, if you cross that organization, then you basically are crossing the essence of who he is internally. Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing is Saturn, remember, is up there by the midheaven. Mm-hmm. And Saturn rules his communication paradigm. So there's that foundation of structure and longevity and legacy. I like to think of Saturn as even what you leave behind. Maybe Billy gets into a project that outlives him, outlasts him.
Well, all he does is communicate. That's his job. I mean, he's all over the place. He's doing the Olympics too for our iHeartRadio
Congratulations.
stations. I mean, that's amazing.
Huge. Yeah, that is huge.
It's huge.
And that's the other thing, because that Saturn is in Gemini. So Gemini is a dual sign. It's the sign of the twins. In other words, more than one. But that he has so many opportunities and is doing so many things in so many places is perfect for him.
And it's his passion. His love is radio.
Yeah.
Right.
So he has this just very solid structure. I'll tell you, between that Saturn, where it is in his chart for what he does, and that Virgo rising, Billy is a great asset to any company that he works for. And iHeart is just obviously recognizing his brilliance by this Olympics assignment is just huge.
He's all over the iHeart. He's been with them for a long time. So when you said longevity as an employee, that would be him. Is there anything else? What is
well, the sun sign. Let's talk about the Scorpio for a second, because I know that one well. I got the same thing. In fact, my Scorpio's at 6 degrees. Billy's is at 8. So we kind of have a brotherhood there. Scorpio is...
You guys both are into microphones and techie stuff, by the way.
We have some shared passions, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, Scorpio gets beat up a lot because Scorpios can throw the tail of the scorpion, and it's a quick snap reaction. And that's one thing that people have to realize about a scorpion. If it whacks you, that's it. It's over. It just had to go whack, and then it just goes away.
If he's mad, he'll whack, and then it'll be done.
It'd be done. And it is, I mean, done. And that's one thing that people have to realize. And for people who hang on to things, you have those friends who say, yeah, but Judy, back in 2008, I remember we were at a bar, and you said da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
They're keeping it. With a Scorpio, if you get the whack, you've got to realize, oh, okay, something went wrong, but now that's over.
You said he's got Libra, something about Libra in his chart. I want to hear about that.
Libra rules Billy's money paradigm, for one thing. And see, Libra is Venus, and Venus is all about the creative arts. Venus is about the creative side. So that's not only his money area, but he has two very interesting planets in that sign. He has Uranus and Mars, and they're right next to each other. So this is really key for how he would approach money, that Uranus is always going to keep things interesting. That's the planet of change and surprises. It's also the planet of technology. So he makes money, and I know he's into microphones and that kind of thing, and all the latest tech tools to make the job better. See, there's the better. There's the Capricorn and the Saturn. He's not doing this because he likes toys. He's doing it because he wants the product to be easier, faster, better, and sound better.
Yeah, that's totally him.
He has that power to be that revolutionary in his own world. So when he comes up with these new ideas, people would do well to listen.
He always is really good at workaround methods.
Exactly. See, the change, that's that Uranus total flex. And this is, again, a core fiber of who he is. You know, when he comes in the room with the latest, hey, Judy, look at this. Your eyes are rolling and you go, we just bought one of those 6 weeks ago. Yeah, but look, he found something better. Like he has a nose for this like nobody else.
So I need to start listening more to that?
Yes, you do. Listen, because he has something that probably will make it better and faster and easier for everybody. It's true. So that's another characteristic. But it also means that he is very powerful about coming up with radical new ideas of how to make money.
And what about his money? Is he going to be okay money-wise?
Oh, yeah. Because the sun, that's him in astrology, is in Scorpio. So that's that deep sign. I mean, Scorpio gets to the bottom of everything. It's deep, it's passionate, it's lasting, it's never going to give up, it's tenacious, it never quits, it's always there. You can't get rid of it. You can't kill a scorpion. You know, you just can't. And that's the way with a Scorpio. I mean, they just are the last to turn the lights out. And so he will always keep working, keep finding new ways. It just if effort alone is worth some kind of compensation, he'll get that just off of effort. But there's a whole lot more brilliance built into his chart beyond that. So yes, he will absolutely be fine because his money sign, his money house area of the chart is ruled by the money planet, Venus. So already he has a blessing from the universe in that very area.
It's interesting, again, how he and I both share houses in the art of communication and broadcasting.
Well, see, and that's the thing. So we already talked about his career area of the chart is all about communication. Well, what about Mercury, the planet of communication? Well, that's in his third house, which is the communication area of the chart. When we're talking about these houses, if you think of a piece of pie, and if you cut a pie into 12 equal size slices, we're talking about, and then the first slice is over there at the 9 o'clock position, where we were talking about that sunrise point. Then you go counterclockwise. So then now you start working the other way. 1, 2, 3. That's the area of communication. And Mercury, which rules communication, is in that area of communication. And it's perfectly positioned in there right next to the planet Neptune, which we won't go into that in particular here, but just to say that it's almost a spiritual thing for Billy.
Nailed it.
Well, you know how you talk about the flow state, like an athlete gets in the flow state?
Yeah.
That's Billy. And he can just zone into it. Boom.
And he has such a spiritual passion for what he does. God, that's him. And, his dad was a broadcaster.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that makes total sense, too, because Saturn in the chart reflects the father, and it's in that broadcast area.
No way.
I'm telling you, Judy.
You can't make this stuff up. That is crazy.
I looked at this. I'm a Scorpio. I'm going to look at this and pick it apart. Is this for real? Is this for me? Is this something I'm going to attach my name to, much less get out there and do podcasts? I'm not going to risk myself on something that's a scam or a fraud or a 2-bit flake thing. When I keep bumping into stuff, just stop and explain to me how this chart shows that accident, and then we'll go from there. I'm waiting.
I can't. That's what's so crazy. That's what's so crazy. And I got to add in here, to me, I'm a firm believer of God, obviously, and I'm a firm believer that God had made this happen. He gave us this ability to look to the sky. As the Gospels, Jesus would have said, look to the planets and stars for signs. This is not an accident.
If you didn't believe in some kind of divine creation, then explain to me how all of the planets that we're talking about here, the closest one to the sun is Mercury, the farthest one out is Pluto, 3.3 billion miles. All of those planets are aligned on a perfect circle around the Earth. Perfect circle. It's called the ecliptic. Look it up. Google the images of the ecliptic line.
Crazy.
Now, you tell me how all of those planets just lined up like that, and then we have a system to interpret what they mean? I told somebody the other day, I said, if you don't believe astrology has even Christian, a lot of Christians don't like astrology. They think it's evil. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you got a problem. Because there were 3 astrologers at the manger scene.
They followed the star, right?
The Magi, the Persian astrologers, the Magi. The Magi Society still exists today. They were astrologers.
And aren't you then denying that, and this is just my opinion, that God didn't make the heavens and the earth, which include planets?
Well, that's how the whole story begins, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the beginning.
Does. So I love it. In the beginning.
Well, and however you filter that and interpret that, but you have to say, wow, to all of this. I mean, we just saw in this alignment of this perfect circle across the sky. So think about it. Those planets are somewhere aligned around that circle. And think about how big space is and where those planets floating around out there had to align. That Billy's Saturn that rules his arms and his legs was right there in position with the sun's highest point in the sky, reflecting that accident, but also reflecting the brilliance of his career. Crazy. I get chills saying that.
That is insanely crazy, and I love it, and I mean, you nailed it.
So the chart reads, Billy's life, he has unfolded according to this chart quite well. It really is remarkable. Now, he has his challenges. There are stuff in there that we haven't gone into that.
Yeah,
but we all do. And we have those challenges for what reason? It's the same reason you go to the gym and you move something that's heavy.
To work it out.
The more you work it out, the stronger you grow. And that's exactly what those hurdles are there in our life, is for us not to be succumbed to them, but it's for us to grow through them and then thus be stronger and better. They're for our good.
If you want to learn more for your good, join the journey with us. Subscribe to the Sky Vibe Show. And in the show notes, you'll find all the links to the amazing, the incredible Thomas Miller.